and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 581, and today's date is February 2nd, 2015, and the title of this episode is Warning the Islamic State Plotting Something Bigger Than 9/11. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, we understand out in Greece they're trying to deal with the IMF, the ECB, basically the central bankers, and they're trying to work out this debt problem. And as we know, Greece cannot sustain this debt. This debt has been thrown onto Greece, debt tranche after debt tranche. The people are suffering, and this government promised that they will do something about this. And they're trying to work through this right now with the EU. And we can see right now the ECB is starting to threaten Greece and saying, listen, if you don't come to a deal in 1 month by February 28th, we are no longer going to fund the Greek banks. We will just end it, and we will destroy your economy. This is basically what they're saying, because they do not want to write down the debt. Merkel was out there, and she has said that the banks and creditors had already forgiven a considerable amount of Greece's debt, and that she rejected any further concessions. There has already been voluntary debt forgiveness by private creditors. Banks have already slashed billions from Greece's debt. And she doesn't envision any fresh debt cancellation. So right now they're threatening them, and they're saying they're going to cut off all funds to the Greek banks. And we have to look at the situation and say, well, what happens if Greece decides to go someplace else, like Russia or the BRIC system? Now, the corporate media is out there, and they're trying to convince everyone that, no, Greece, they don't want to go to Russia. They're saying that Tsipras, he said that, no, Greece is completely ruling out any type of aid from Russia. And this is coming out of Reuters and many other corporate media news agencies. But this is not what he said. He said that he is dealing with the EU right now to work out this debt, that he might look at Russia if it doesn't work out. So basically, the corporate media in the private Western Central Bank system wants everyone to believe that they will not turn to Russia or the BRIC systems, that they'll continually work with the EU system. But we can see from his statement that he is saying specifically that there are no other thoughts on the table right now in regards to Russia. We want to deal with the EU first, and again, if we can't come to a decision, we always have other options, and this is what is happening out in Greece. Now, we see that Greece is trying to change up the strategy, and they realize, the German people, IMF, ECB, the rest of the private Western Central Bank countries, look at a debt write-off or a haircut as something bad. And of course, as we know, IMF, ECB, they don't want this out there where Greece was allowed to write off a lot of their debt. So Greece is coming up with a different strategy where they're no longer going to call it a debt write-off. They're going to propose a debt exchange instead. And basically, when you look at this, it's really a debt write-off. Namely, a distressed debt exchange, such as what Greece is proposing, is what the rating agencies have always deemed an event of default, and thus something which the ECB might not agree with once again. And they might look at this saying, yes, you're telling us it's something different, but really it is a debt haircut, it is a write-off, because as we know, just by changing the words of something does not mean that it is different. And we can see this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to put a positive spin on the situation. Now, here in the United States, what are we seeing? We're seeing that 10% of the U.S. refining capacity is completely offline right now after U.S. oil workers staged the largest national strike since 1980. And they're saying that there is a problem with these oil companies. They are too greedy to make a positive change in the workplace, and they continue to value production and profit over health and safety. Well, that's the definition of corporations. Profit. That is it. And they are greedy. They don't care about safety or the health of the workers. They want people to work for the least amount and they don't want to put anything else into the company. And we see this happening time and time again with many, many corporations. Now, we also understand that this holiday season was a complete bust. Now, the corporate media is continually trying to convince us that the holiday season was great because they use their illusionary numbers from the unemployment numbers, from GDP, from inflation, retail, housing. They are able to manipulate every single statistical number. But as we know, we look at the real economic indicators, and we're starting to see, even though gas prices have gone down, guess what? Spending has not gone anywhere. Actually, it declined. After last month's epic personal income and spending data manipulation revision by the BEA, the household savings rate, income less spending, was revised lower not once, but twice. But this is what they do. They go back and they revise the numbers to make it look better. In the process of eliminating $140 billion, or some 20% in household savings, personal spending dropped in the month of December by a whopping 0.3%. The biggest miss of expectations since January of 2014, when we had that terrible snowy weather, which they blamed the GDP for, when that declined. And we can see right now they are doing the same thing once again. But when we look at this, we could see that things are not getting better. People are tapped out, and this is why you're seeing they're not spending. They're not taking their money and going out to retail and purchasing goods. Wages and salaries only increased by 0.1%. And if you look at real inflation, that does not keep up with inflation whatsoever. So people are actually making less money. And when we look at the situation, and we look at a new study which was released by Pew Charitable Trust, they found that 47% of American households spend all their income on expenses. They have no disposable income left over. That same 47% also dips into savings or goes into debt to pay bills. Part of the report was based on numbers from the Federal Reserve, which recently claimed the U.S. economy was expanding at a solid pace. But we can see that it isn't. This is almost half the people in the United States. However, the study by the Pew Charitable Trust paints a much darker picture. The study found that if these households went through a period of no income, they would burn through their savings in 21 days. If these same families used their retirement investment, they would last 4 months. A separate report by the Corporation for Enterprise Development stated, nationally, 56% of consumers have subprime credit scores, meaning they cannot qualify for credit or financing at prime rates and are more likely to use costly alternative products like, payday loans and things like that. And we can see that these people are actually going out and purchasing automobiles, purchasing homes now, because the government is realizing there is nobody left. So we have to open up the market to subprime people. And we can see that this will not be able to be sustained. It cannot. We already see in the auto industry, sales are starting to drop off. We see that delinquencies are rising, and we're going to see the same thing in housing. I don't think we're going to get a bump up like we've seen in the auto industry, because everybody would like to have a new car. A house is a very different animal, and I don't think we're going to see that bump up like the government thinks. We might see a tiny one, but I don't think we're going to get that huge bump up of real estate. Actually, what I'm seeing is real estate prices continually declining, people having a longer period of time trying to get rid of their homes, and they're finding the traffic is drying up. And we're seeing more and more layoffs as time goes on. Walt Disney is laying off 500 IT workers. Viacom says layoffs are likely this quarter. They can't pinpoint a number, but I'm going to tell you right now, it's probably going to be pretty darn large. And we see that this housing market that they keep telling us is recovering, even though sales are down, existing home sales are down. We see that, and I reported on this before, home ownership in the United States has fallen to 20-year lows. Did you know that it has been falling consistently for an entire decade? What does this tell us? It tells us the housing industry is imploding on itself. And this is why the mortgage companies and Citibank, JP Morgan, Bank of America, they were laying off tens of thousands of people going all the way back to August of 2013, because they realized, guess what? We're not going to need them. Because we understand the people are tapped out, and most of the purchase were coming from cash buyers, investment companies, hedge funds that were getting free money from the Federal Reserve. And we can see that the U.S., the people here, it's not getting better. The Obama administration tells us that 8.69 million Americans are officially unemployed, and that 92.90 million Americans are considered to be not in the labor force. That means that more than 101 million U.S. adults do not have a job right now. This is absolutely awful. We are in a depression territory right now. I mean, as we continually look at these economic indicators, it gets worse and worse every single month. It does not get better. The only thing that gets better are the statistical numbers that the government puts out, the stock market, and the suppression of oil and precious metals. This is it. So everything they can control with numbers gets better, but everything in the real economic indicators show us that things are getting worse and worse as time goes on. One recent survey discovered that 55% of Americans believe that American dream either never existed or that it no longer exists. After adjusting for inflation, median household income has fallen by nearly $5,000 since 2007. At this point, 59% of Americans believe that the American dream has become impossible for most people to achieve. Now, the group that has been hit quite hard are the youth of America. Back in 2005, the homeownership rate for households headed up for someone under the age of 35 was approximately about 43%. Today, it has declined to about 35%. The good jobs that we promised those people that are coming out of school do not exist anymore. When we look at real information here, according to the Pew Research Center, close to 4 out of every 10 households that are led by someone under the age of 40 are currently paying off student loan debt. At this point, student loan debt has reached about $1.2 trillion, and that number has grown by an astounding 84% just since 2008. Back in 1968, well over 50% of all Americans in the age bracket from 18 to 31 were already married and living on their own. Today, the number is below 25%. Instead, approximately 31% of all U.S. adults in the age bracket 18 to 34 are living with their parents. Boy, how times have changed. People cannot make it. They cannot find those jobs. They don't have the income to go out and live. And people are finding it tougher and tougher as time goes on. ISM Manufacturing Index slid to 53.5, missing expectations of 54.5. This is the lowest since January of 2014. New orders plunged to the lowest of 2012. U.S. manufacturing remains in low gear. It's not going anywhere. It's flatlined. But we can see why this is happening, because we've been reporting on this for quite a while. The Baltic Dry Index, this is the raw material that they use for manufacturing. It has dropped now below 600 points. It's at 590. This is very low. When we look at this, and we look at this information about everything, we can see that going back 1 year, in February of 2014, the Baltic Dry Index on February 2nd was around 1,100 points. But what's very interesting about this is that unemployment was at 6.7%. Today, February 2nd, 2015, the Baltic Dry Index is at 590, and the unemployment rate is at 5.6%. more than 1% lower than it was 1 year ago. Why is manufacturing having such a hard time? Why is retail closing more stores now than they did in the past? Why have sales dropped off? Why have earnings from corporations dropped off? More people are employed. Does it make sense to anyone? Think about it. Unemployment was at its lowest since 2008. And Black Friday was disgusting. It was terrible. The entire holiday season was awful. Stores are going out of business when unemployment is lower than it was last year. So who's lying here? Is it the government manipulated statistical numbers? Or is it us who continually look at the real economic indicators? Well, from this picture, it sure does look like the government, the central bankers, who are trying to keep this illusion alive. We're looking at the real economic indicators, and what we are seeing and everything that we put together makes sense. What they're telling us makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Former Governor Pataki is out there, and this is a New York governor. He's saying that America's economy is not growing. The economy that's booming is in Washington. This is where the growth is. This is where the jobs are. There are now 7,000 registered lobbyists in Washington, D.C. Actually, most of the people that have jobs are through the government at this point. And those people living in Washington, yes, it is booming there. They have the inside information. They're making money hand over fist, while the rest of the country is hurting. They don't see a problem. They get into their limo, they have their gym, they have the Beth Health insurance, they vote if they need a raise. They don't see anything outside of their little bubble world. They think everything is just like what's happening here. And the American people are stingy. They don't want to spend their money. Well, what they don't realize is they don't have the money. If they got out of their little bubble world and went out into the United States, they would see this, but they don't want to do that. They don't care about that. And this is why they continually make laws and pass legislation that doesn't help the people. It helps them. It helps the corporations. It helps the central bankers. It helps everyone but the people. We see the same thing is happening out in Europe right now. Just like the Fed created all this money, well, we know what the money was for. It was to help the 1%, to help corporations, to pump the stock market up, and to help the banking system. Well, the ECB's monthly spending will include its existing program to buy covered bonds and asset-backed securities. The added purchase, Draghi said, 12% will be debt issued by European Union institutions and agencies, and the rest will be government bonds, 88% of that. Given the problem that the banks use government bonds for reserves, and these are not market to market, you can read between the lines and see this is buying in bad debt to bail out the banks. It is not a stimulus plan for the economy. This will have zero impact upon saving European economy, for the money will never create a single job, the same thing that happened here in the United States. And all they're doing is transferring the money creation from place to place, from Japan, from the United States to ECB, and they're doing the same thing in each one of the areas. It's to boost the banking system. It's to help themselves out. It's to pillage the rest of the people, to take as much wealth as they possibly can from every single person before this system crashes. That's all this is. Now, what's very interesting is that there's an obscure resolution that was introduced in the U.S. House of Representatives last week, resolution number 41. And it wasn't really spread around the corporate media. Actually, really, not many people really know about this. The fact that there was essentially no coverage of this resolution really shows how the mainstream media is completely turning a blind eye to the true fiscal situation in the United States. Well, of course, as we know, the corporate media is controlled by the government. It is all the media outlets are owned by 8 corporations or so. And the entire point of the resolution is to say the federal government is broke. It can't pay its own bills, and therefore it shouldn't be responsible to pay anyone else either. They're going to run up the debt as high as they can, which essentially means pulling future tax revenue into today. And this is why we see the government right now putting together more and more tax programs to take the wealth and to take whatever they possibly can from the rest of the people. This is why they have Obamacare. This is why they had FATCA. This is why Obama proposed taking taxes from the 529 college retirement fund until there was a uproar about this. Now he's putting together other tax initiatives because he needs to get more and more revenue into the government. They realize this is the end game, and this is what governments do in the end. They tax as much as they possibly can until there's nothing less. What's even more concerning is that it was just ignored, and it will pretty much have 0% of passing. This resolution will go nowhere. To say that the government is broke. Because they don't want anyone to realize this. They want to blame this on another group or country. And this is what they're planning for. This is the run-up to World War III. Just like we saw during World War I. Just like we saw during the Great Depression, the run-up to World War II. We are seeing the same thing happen right now. And all military assets are being put into place, and every country is creating laws, putting their police forces in place to deal with the people when the system collapses, because they can cover it up by saying it was another group or country, but they cannot stop the collapse, and they realize this. And they realize people are going to be angry. People are going to riot. People are going to come after the central bankers, the government officials, because they're just tired of this. They're tired and they cannot survive. And when you push people back against the wall and they have nothing to lose, the people rise up. We've seen this in history time and time again. Now, we understand that all the states now have to come into compliance with DHS because they want all the states now to issue real IDs. And what this means is that every single state will take your information, they will send it to DHS, which has a federal database, which will take your iris scan, your fingerprint, your DNA, all these different records that they want, and they'll put it into a database. And this will be all correlated to create a social profile of every single person. And your new real ID will be fitted with an RFID chip to be tracked. It will also have a barcode just in case the RFID chip fails. And we can see right now, if you want to travel, you will need a passport or a real ID. A license will not work anymore. And we can see they are pushing this, and they want this to go live in 2016. Some states have already been issuing the real ID, and you have to get all your information and all your documentation together to get this card. And if you don't have it, guess what? It's going to be very, very hard to travel unless you get a passport. And we can see right now that they are preparing to have checkpoints using this real ID. They've been testing it out by having police just set up checkpoints all around in different states, have people stop. They want to get people used to this. They want people to get used to giving over their DNA for just abiding by whatever they say to do. And of course, with our rights, we do not have to stop unless we've committed some type of crime. And just because they ask you to stop doesn't mean we have to. And we can see right now many people say, I'm not stopping, I'm not working with you, are you holding me? And we see many, many videos like this, and a lot of the people are able to drive off, and sometimes the law enforcement get a little angry. Some break windows. Some get pissed off. Some say you don't have the right. But yes, you do. We have the right to travel wherever we want without being stopped, if we did not break any laws whatsoever. Now, there is a new bill in Congress, and I mentioned this before, but I'm going to mention this once again, where Congress, the U.S. House of Representatives, would prohibit the sale, transfer, or possession of military-level body armor. And the question we have to ask, and this is Bill number H.R. 5344, we have to ask ourselves, why don't they want the people to have body armor? They're telling us that terrorists are coming. Just like we saw in Paris, Australia, Canada. And if terrorists are out there, wouldn't it make sense for the people to have body armor and a weapon to protect themselves? So what they're telling us is that instead of protecting us, we should have no body armor so the terrorists can get to us, no weapons to protect us, because what's happening here is their stories are starting to conflict, and they're starting to get mixed up here, because they're trying to keep the narrative that terrorists are coming, and they're trying to keep the narrative that your government is trying to keep you safe. How could this be? Because what we're trying to figure out here is that there are no terrorists. These attacks are from the government, and you can see how these stories are starting to get mixed up for them. They can't keep the story straight. If they're telling us that terrorists are coming and we have to be worried, just like in Paris, where they might have weapons, then we should have body armor. Then every single person should have a weapon. Because the government, the police officers, cannot protect you. Think about it. This is a very simple situation. You're walking down the street and someone punches you and continually hits you. Do you just stand there and wait for law enforcement? Or do you defend yourself because someone is coming at you? If somebody has a weapon and they start to fire at the people, wouldn't it be nice to have a weapon to fire back, or to have body armor to protect yourself? So their stories don't make sense, because all of this and what they're saying is to keep you without weapons, to keep you without body armor, because they know when the collapse comes, they want their forces to control the people. They don't want people to fight back. They don't want people to be protected from weapons or to have weapons. It's a form of control. Now, the NYPD announced a task force with high-tech weaponry to handle terrorist attacks and protests. What? So basically, they're putting together, and this is coming from Police Commissioner Bill Bratton, a new task force. The unit will consist of 350 cops, will be trained in high-tech weaponry to deal with protest, lone wolf attacks, and evolving threats posed by terrorists. The Strategic Response Group, that's what it's going to be called, will be dedicated to disorder control and terrorism. Wait a minute, what is disorder control? You mean disobedience, civil disobedience? Is that what they're talking about? They'll be equipped and trained in ways that our normal patrol officers are not. They'll be equipped with extra heavy protective gear, long rifles, and fully automatic machine guns. And they'll be able to have this task force to be used with protests like Occupy Wall Street or any other protest that is out there in New York. Well, wait a minute. Whoa. So they're arming up police, giving them full machine guns to go after protesters? What does this have to do with terrorism? It has nothing to do with terrorism, because the terrorism is ginned up by each government. It's fake, it's phony, it's false. It's used to trick you into doing things you normally wouldn't do. It's to keep you in fear, to bring you into war, to remove your rights. And you can see right now, these special task force that we see in Paris now, in Belgium, in Australia, in Canada, in Spain, in Italy, and here in the United States, it's popping up all over the place. All of this is to control the people. Period. That is it. But don't worry, Obama is out there. And he's saying that since he took office, Americans are much safer now on his watch. From everything that they put in place, terrorism is way down. Well, actually, they've never found any type of terrorism. DHS, TSA, nothing. And the one-time terrorism hit in Boston, they completely missed it. Well, we know why they missed it, because it was an inside job. Blackwater was right there, ready to go. They had the insignia, they had everything, or maybe it was a different group, I forget which group it was. But there was a group there, there was videos of it, there were pictures of it, and we can see right now that all of this is ridiculous. It's to keep people in fear. Obama did nothing. All of this that was put in place, they've never found any terrorism whatsoever. And the time that it happened, there was no warning. There was no warnings on the DHS website. There was absolutely nothing. So his statement makes no sense whatsoever. Now, out in Ukraine, we understand that there was a coup d'etat which overthrew the elected government, and the United States government central bankers put in a central bank government. And Obama was being interviewed and on CNN, and actually he acknowledged that the United States had brokered a deal to transition power in Ukraine. So they don't even care anymore. They're out there saying, yes, we had regime change. Basically, all these places where you see the Arab Spring, where you see things going on in China like the Umbrella Revolution, in Venezuela, in Ukraine, and all these other countries, it is all the United States pushing regime change. They want their people in there. They want to capture the natural resources. They want to put in a central bank. And here Obama is already out there admitting it. Now, Obama, since what's going on in Ukraine, where Ukraine is losing the battle, the war inside against the southeastern people, and they can't prove that Russia is inside there with 500 tanks and 9,000 soldiers, because we've already heard from a general in Ukrainian armed forces that, yeah, Russia is not here. They don't have tanks. They don't have soldiers. It was a big hoax, but it doesn't matter. Obama has requested nearly $170 million to respond to the alleged Russian interference in Ukraine. They're continually going on with this story. They're asking for more money. They want to bring in weapons. Well, they're already there. They're covertly brought into Ukraine. We know we have special forces, paid mercenaries already in Ukraine from Britain, from the U.S., and many other areas. And we can see that all of this is propaganda to convince the rest of the country. And as we know, Russia does not have 500 tanks. They do not have 9,000 soldiers. And if they were coming across the border in any way whatsoever, the United States, Ukraine, NATO, they have satellites right above. And I'm not talking about those black and white, blurry ones from 1970 that were photoshopped. I'm talking about the high-tech, clear, colored 3D ones, where they can see the insignias of the tank on the tanks. They don't. If they saw something, they saw this coming in. Guess what? It would have been plastered all over the corporate media in no time flat. But guess what? They have spotted nothing, so there's nothing to report. So they have to use propaganda, and we've seen this many, many times before. Now, we understand over this weekend, Kiev and the southeastern people inside Ukraine met to discuss a ceasefire in Minsk, and guess what? It did not work out. And what we're seeing is that the Donetsk people are saying, listen, Kiev needs to send an envoy that has the authority to sign documents on behalf of the Ukrainian government. Every time we sit down to talk, there is no one that has the authorization to sign these documents. And this is why these peace talks are going nowhere. Basically, what Poroshenko is doing, he is stalling. He does not want a ceasefire because he's getting instructions from the central bankers, and they do not want this to happen. They want a full-out war. They want Russia to come in. They've been trying to provoke Russia for the longest time. Now, we understand over the weekend there were 2 Russian reporters. They were reporting on the humanitarian offenses from the Ukrainian government. They were taken into a captivity, and right now Ukraine's Security Service, SBU, has pledged to tighten measures to ban entry to Russian journalists right now. And they're saying that they are waging an information war against Ukraine, but basically what they're doing is they're reporting about what's going on, and they don't want this reported, so they are banning all reporters. So much for free speech. And we see this happen in every single country the United States government central bankers are in. They ban the reporters. They don't report what's going on there, and the corporate media here actually reports on absolutely nothing. Now we see the Ukrainian soldiers. They've made a huge offensive, but they are surrounded now. About 7,000 to 8,000 soldiers are surrounded by the Donetsk forces, and we can see right now they want them to surrender, and we're going to have to watch that to see what happens as time goes on. But we can see Ukrainian forces, they're not very well trained, and the draftees that are coming into the forces, they only go in there for a certain period of time, and we can see that they are pushed forward by the other troops from Kiev that are behind them saying, don't retreat, go forward or we will shoot you. And we can see right now that Kiev is reinforcing their front line, and they're getting prepared to strike into Donetsk. And right now, the southeastern people are seeing what's happening. They see the buildup of more and more troops. They see that they are drafting hundreds of thousands of people. And the people in the East Ukraine are saying, listen, this is going to be a huge offensive. We do not have enough soldiers to protect ourselves. So we are going to have to find volunteers. And they're putting out the word, we need volunteers. We need to create 5 new brigades. And they are not doing the same thing as Kiev is doing, where they're just drafting people. They are looking for volunteers first to come in and help out, and it seems like they are getting these volunteers. Now, it seems there's some information coming out of Ukraine from Ukrainian TV station, which is basically funded by the U.S. government, the Dutch government, George Soros, via his International Renaissance Foundation or fund. Ukrainian TV has reported that the Ukrainian government is specifically targeting civilians to die in the Donbass region in the former Ukraine's southeast. It's being done in order to clean the cities. If we take, for example, just the Donetsk area, there are approximately 4 million inhabitants, at least 1.5 million of which are a kind of a waste of space. Donbass must be exploited as a resource, which it is. The most important thing that must be done, no matter how cruel it may sound, is that there is a certain category of people that must be exterminated. Now, we've seen this before with the central bankers. They don't care about the people. They don't care if they die. They want the natural resources of that area, and we have seen this in every single country they go into. Think about it. They're in Ukraine, and all these Ukrainian people were part of a country. The coup d'etat went in there, and they took over. They threw out the elected president. They put in central bankers. And now those same people, which they were supporting to overthrow the elected government, saying the people have the right to speak and to rise up, because this is democracy, those same people are now terrorists. They have designated them as terrorists because they don't go along with the new puppet regime. They don't care about the people. And like I said this before, once the U.S. government central bankers come into a country and they're trying to overthrow the government that's there, they back the people. It's democracy. It's freedom of speech. Once they have the power, the people then who are against them become the terrorists. We see the same thing happening here in the United States. Everyone that is anti-government, who thinks the government is not on the right track, who doesn't agree with the government, we are all on the list as terrorists. Now, it has been reported in the New York Times that the U.S. government is considering supplying arms to Ukraine. Well, as we know, they're already supplying arms to Ukraine. But what they're trying to do is convince everyone that, yes, we're going to do it now. It's going to be out in the open, but they've already been doing it, and they always use this type of propaganda to make it seem like, no, we haven't been doing it before, but we're going to discuss it, and most likely we will supply them with weapons, which, as we know, they already are getting those weapons. A lot of the weapons, the munitions that have been found in the area where there was the battle, they have markings of NATO and the U.S. on them, so we know the weapons are already there. Now, as we know, the Kiev government, the Poroshenko, the U.S., everyone's out there, Germany, we want peace in Ukraine. But during this whole time that they want peace, what are they doing? Well, it seems that France begins sending tanks to Poland. Ukraine shifts its tanks to the front line, and third, NATO has confirmed plans to create a permanent command center in Eastern Europe. This does not sound like peace to me. This seems like they're talking about peace, but their actions are showing that they want war, and this is exactly what they want. Now, out in the Middle East, we see the Yemeni people. They are out there, and they're saying, listen, we want to be part of the military. We want to be part of the police. And these are our terms because, of course, they want to control all of this. They want to control the government because they've taken over Yemen. The government has fallen, and the last thing they need to do is to take over and be part of the armed forces and the police forces. And we can see this is what they are pushing for. We see the Islamic State right now pushing into Afghanistan. The Islamic State began operations in northern Afghanistan and plans to launch operations in other northern areas. And of course, this is to make the case why the U.S., NATO need to go back into Afghanistan. Like I said, we have never left. We are not going to leave. The new president there signed the bilateral security agreement, which gives immunity to our soldiers. This is what they needed to keep the soldiers there, and now they're using the propaganda that the Islamic State is moving into this area, and you can see right now this is what they're pushing. Now, we can see right now they are using the story of chemical weapons once again in Syria because they have nothing else to use at this point. The United States is trying to put the Syrian government under pressure using the information on chlorine production facilities allegedly captured by jihadists. Now, this was not part of the chemical weapons ban. Chlorine gas was not part of it, and they're saying that the Islamic State has captured their chlorine gas supplies, and this should be all part of the chemical weapons, and they're trying to use this to maneuver and put pressure on Damascus and to make it look like Syria still has chemical weapons, and they have nothing else to go on at this point. Nothing at all. Now we see that the two Japanese citizens, they were allegedly beheaded, but I have a question, and I understand why this is all done. They put Japan into this situation because they want Japan to vote for laws where they're able to go outside and attack other nations with no problem. This is what they've been fighting for. I think it's Article 9, where they want the ability to go out and attack. Instead of a passive nation, they want to be an aggressive nation. And we can see right now this would help them do that. But the question about this is, if this message was for Japan, why is it in English? There are so many inconsistencies with all of this, it makes no sense. The only reason they would put this in English is because it is for the American people. It is a show. And we can see right now, this is all that it is. Now we see right now the Islamic State is planning something much, much bigger than 9/11. A British medical student who went looking for the Islamic State on search for a friend's twin daughter, who left home to marry terrorists, lived with the Islamic State, earned their trust, and managed to escape to Turkey. Gee, this just seems very convenient. He said the Islamic State are planning something bigger than 9/11. They want to be more, they want to be better and bigger than Al-Qaeda. Well, this is all propaganda to lead up to the next false flag event. We can see, and as we know, they've been planning this for quite a while. And what the corporate media and the U.S. government, the central bankers, have been doing is they've been prepping the entire country for this. And this is coming out of the Common Sense Show, which is something called groupthink. Victims of groupthink, and this is from Dr. Janice, which documented 8 symptoms of groupthink. And I'm just going to go through these and see if it matches up with what's happening today. The illusion of invulnerability is often perpetrated when a cause comes first, becomes public. If God is for us, who can be against us is often the kind of mentality that permeates a group in which self-righteousness will somehow protect the group from the faulty decisions of their leaders. The illusion of the invulnerability creates excessive optimism that encourages taking extreme risks. In the early days of a movement, people lose their minds and volunteer to give up their lives in order to kill complete strangers, in order that billionaire bankers can make billions of dollars of more money. And we see people going off to the Afghan war, to Iraq, because of all this terrorism. So we see that this is exactly how it works. Number 2, the member of a group quickly fall into a type of collective rationalization in the early days of groupthink. If my neighbors believe in our course of action, it must be perfectly okay to engage in things like genocide, mass murder, torture, and things like that. Number three, belief in inherent and self-righteous morality. This view is often expressed as President George W. Bush once said, "You are either with us, the central bankers, or you're with the terrorists, the people." That's basically what he said. The members of the group believe in the righteousness of their cause and therefore ignore the ethical or moral consequences of their decisions. Number 4, stereotyped views of unfavorable outgroups is perpetrated. Stereotypical and extreme negative views of the enemy make effective responses to conflict seem unnecessary. This leads to the creation of devices like the infamous red list, which will basically be used one day to rid the country of any people who do not agree with the government. And we can see this is exactly what's going on. They continually tell us those terrorists are people who are anti-government, sovereign citizens. Those people who store goods for a later time if something happens. Preppers, as they like to call us. We can see that this is what they are using. Number 6, self-censorship becomes a critical operating component of the group. People fear speaking out, so they don't. Doubts and deviations from the perceived group consensus are not expressed for fear of retaliation from the group and its leaders. This is when a society begins to live in fear of its government and the establishment behind the government. Freedom of speech, the fear of speaking out, of saying, wait a minute, it doesn't make sense. We see this happening in Australia, in France, in Canada, in Belgium, Germany, Italy, all these different countries, and here in the United States. If you're not with the story the government is putting out and you speak differently against different groups, against what is happening, this is self-censorship. You're scared to do it. Number 7, the illusion of unanimity is perpetrated in and among the members of a group. The majority view and judgments are assumed to be unanimous. This becomes the wellspring of prohibitions on free speech, politically motivated roundups, and deportation to concentration camps, like FEMA camps. Nowhere can we find a better example of what happens when 6 corporations control 98% of the media. Browse through the networks during the news hour, and you won't find a stone's throw difference between the way the CBS, NBC, ABC, CNN, and Fox report the news, and we don't see any difference whatsoever. Self-appointed mind guards becomes a key operating component of the group. This is number 8. Members protect the group and the leader from information that is problematic or contradictory to the group's cohesiveness. So basically what we have is trolls on the new media / alternative media trying to convince people that no, this is not the real story. Listen to the government. This is the central operating principle of the maintenance group think. Any dissension inside the group is quickly dealt with as if the dissenter were a member of the group of which their group is aligned against. All of this groupthink that we're hearing about right now is being used to condition the American people for world war. With every journalist, the Islamic State beheadings, with every staged terror attack upon Americans' interests, the American people are being readied for war. The rest of the world is being ready for war. And this is all being done through groupthink. It is the prime method of mental subjugation of our people. And we can see they are definitely doing this. They are prepping everyone. And if we look throughout all the time we've been discussing this, by incrementally looking at it, we can see, yes, the bigger picture as we step back, this is exactly what they've been doing. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.